Hi, welcome back to my channel Manga Hoarder. My name is Laura and today I'm doing my first impressions or review of the first volume of An Incurable Case of Love by Maki Enjoji. This is a josei manga. It's coming out from Viz in their Shojo Beat imprint. It's only a 7-volume long series, so it shouldn't take too long, I'm thinking, for it to come out, depending on what the release schedule is going to be, which I don't know what it is. It was translated by JN Productions, so kind of a group. Don't know exactly who was working on this, but it was edited by Nancy Thistlethwaite. And you know what? I'm loving it. I'm loving it. That's my first impression. I could stop the video here, but I have lots more to say, of course. I have read this several times now since it arrived, which was just a couple days ago. I keep picking it up instead of picking up other things because I'm in love. I love it so much. It is a romance manga between two characters in a very common situation. I have read this situation so many times, but it doesn't matter. It's one of my favorite situations, and I'm thinking it's handled really well in this. There's a few extra twists in this that are different than a lot of other stories, and just makes this really fun. So basically what has happened is that as a teenager, Sakura Nanase, she's walking along one day and she runs into an older woman who has collapsed on the street. She doesn't know what to do. There's no one around, no one's about to help her, and then all of a sudden Dr. Tendo, a very young doctor who's just doing his residency, happens upon her, helps her out, helps the woman, and he smiles at her, comforts her, and she just realizes that she's found her Prince Charming. So at that moment she decides what she's going to do when she grows up. She finishes college and becomes a nurse, and of course starts at the hospital where Dr. Tendo works. And then on her very first day she tells him that she's in love with him. And turns out that he's not exactly as he appeared in those few moments that they had spent together 5 years earlier. He's a bit of a jerk, and he treats her really badly, and she wasn't prepared for it, so instantly her feelings of love had now turned into feelings of hate. And you know, while she still continues her pursuit of the career of nursing, she and Dr. Tendo have at it like cats and dogs and just fight like crazy, and it's just so much fun to watch. It's certainly not a relationship that you would necessarily want to be in. It is a very passionate relationship, and I think it's going to be passionate on both sides of the term. It does have a +18 rating on it, parental advisory. Actually it's a mature rating, and it does say recommended for ages 18 and up, contains sexual themes. So it's either going to have sort of graphic illustration, or it's going to have kind of more graphic discussion, which is what Maki Enjoji's books do tend to have. They do tend to talk a little bit about stuff. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily very graphically illustrated, but there is sort of more talk, so that's probably why it's rated a little bit higher. So, you know, that's just a warning. If that's, you know, if you're under 18, just be aware. Or if you're over 18, you don't like that stuff, be aware. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait for the next volume. So some of the things about it, because they are working together in their profession, they're both working together in a hospital. You know, he has to train her for some of the aspects because she's a new nurse, so they see each other quite a lot. But if you are falling in love with someone, or even if you are at it with, you know, just, you know, always screaming at each other in the workplace, you know, there's going to be other people who are affected. And so there is quite a lot of the peanut gallery, or sort of the other characters, who are always kind of commenting on their relationship, making fun of their relationship, just adding a lot of levity to this series. I think some of other Maki Enjoji's stories are more serious than this. None of them are very serious, but this one is certainly more of a comedy than I would say the other two that are in English are. And I was totally hysterical for some of it. Well, not hysterical, but I was laughing out loud for some of it. I thought it was really, really funny. There are sort of situations where I think you have to take them with a grain of salt. They were, I think, intended, but this is my interpretation. You know, take even my interpretation with a grain of salt, but my interpretation is that it is fully intended as a comedy, but there are situations where he isn't nice to her and she's not nice to him. There's situations where he, you know, does actually hit her because she's kind of going hysterical. So, there is that in there as well, and then certainly if that's something that makes you uncomfortable, beware. But I think it's mostly intended to be a comedy. There's a lot of jokes, there's a lot of setups, there's a lot of gags in this title. There's bits in it that I just thought were completely brilliant. From a comedy standpoint, I was laughing my head off, and that's great. So for me, it was a lot of fun. There was one character though, because as a woman, she's a nurse, and I think, and I'm hoping that this isn't really that true, but every single nursing related story where the character is a nurse or a doctor and is a woman, there's always a sexual harassment issue, particularly with the older men who are in the hospital. I hope that it's not quite that true. There's a whole story, or a whole little kind of short story that is based on being sexually harassed at work. So again, with a grain of salt. But other than that, I just thought it was totally adorable and a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see how these characters' relationship progress. Because they're going to progress. Even though they're screaming at each other the whole time, Maki Enjoji is not going to let you down. These characters are going to fall in love, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I can't wait for that in particular. So there's lots of really great things that are going on in this story, and because it's going to be quite short, there's a couple of things that I'm kind of anticipating for this manga. It's going to have the love triangle trope. It's long enough, it's gonna have that trope. I really hate cliche. I really hate that cliche. I'm predicting that it's gonna be on her side. She's either going to have a patient who's fallen in love with her. I'm even gonna predict maybe this patient knows her from the past. Or at the very least, she's going to have another student who is with her in college, who ends up kind of also working in the hospital, causing some tension. That's just gonna happen. That's Maki Enjoji to a T. If that doesn't happen, I will be incredibly surprised. Please don't spoil it for me. I want to wait to the end and see if I was right with that. But I just anticipate that that's sort of going to happen, and I imagine that it's going to be on her side. So that's my prediction for this manga. The other prediction, of course, they're going to fall in love, but they're still going to be at each other's throats the entire time, and if they weren't, that would just not be nearly as fun. If they were too lovey-dovey, that just wouldn't be quite as fun. This has to be a real messy, chaotic relationship, and I think that's really what I'm going to enjoy most about this. I was just really excited when I heard that this title was coming out, because I've enjoyed Enjoji's other titles in the past. Speaking of other titles, just in case you're curious, because maybe this title isn't releasing fast enough for you, so we do also have Happy Marriage. This is a 10-volume long series where the relationship starts with them not knowing each other. She agrees to marry him in order to get out of debt, and so that's sort of how the relationship is built. But it's the same kind of characters. They're the same kind of happy-go-lucky, very dominant male character where they are fighting constantly until the very moment that they get married and after. And then we also have SP Baby, which is a 2-volume long series. This is a relationship between, I can't remember what he is. He must be, I've only read it actually the one time. I think he must be in the government or something, but she is a bodyguard, and again, it's a similar dynamic where he's sort of more calm and cool, and she's kind of more all over the place, and there's quite a bit of tension between them. So a lot of fun, and certainly if you enjoy the first volume of An Incurable Case of Love, Maki Enjoji is pretty similar across the board, so you would enjoy her other titles as well. And if you're like me, you also would maybe be kind of inspired to pick up other titles. One recommendation out of print, but it's the same scenario, and it's one of my favorites, so I'm going to recommend it anyway. Itazura na Kiss by Kaoru Tada. This is a little bit of a longish series, around 15-ish volumes, and it was published by DMP, so not easy to get your hands on out of print, all that stuff. But it is a situation in the same vein where the girl has fallen in love with Irie-kun. He is the top of the class and she's absolutely at the bottom of the class, and she confesses in front of everyone only to be completely shot down. Turns out he's not as nice as she was sort of hoping, and they of course end up fighting constantly throughout this series. What's really cute about this one is that Just like An Incurable Case of Love, this one also is kind of medical themed. He does become a doctor, she does become a nurse. Kind of just fits together. Maybe that's the kind of relationship that leads to that profession. Who knows? But it's definitely worth reading if you have a chance. Or if you want more Itazura na Kiss, try Incurable Case of Love, because you're going to get a little bit more of the same. And then the other one that I thought was just such an obvious copy, well, not a copy, but just such an obvious same scenario, and you should go read, and it is available completely, also by Viz, is Library Wars. This is by Kiro Yumi and Hiro Arikawa. Again, the situation where a young girl is rescued in this world. The censorship laws by the government of Japan are taking books out of circulation. This girl wants to buy a book, her favorite book at the store, and it's just about to be kind of torn from her hands when this young man who happens to be on the library task force saves her, saves the book, and rescues her. And at that moment she decides, I'm also going to be on this library task force and look for her Prince Charming. And it is sort of the same kind of situation. They do fight quite a bit. The only difference is that she doesn't know who her Prince Charming is until quite a bit later. It's totally adorable. It's got a great story. I really love the discussion of censorship. I think it's super important. I also like what they say about censorship, so that's important too. But I highly, highly recommend checking this one out if you are looking for a little more Incurable Case of Love, or vice versa. So basically, in summary, I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. Can't wait for the next volume. And I'm looking forward to rereading some of these titles and just enjoying. I cannot wait. I can't wait. It was just so much fun to read, and I'm really excited to be seeing so many more josei manga coming out. So at any rate, that's it for my review. I definitely recommend it. It sounds like something you'd be into. Go check it out. And, you know, if you've read it, let me know what your thoughts are on it down below. Give me some of your predictions. What do you think is going to happen to this relationship, to these characters before we hit the end? I'd be really curious about it. Anyway, I think that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.